hit this broadcast live. We are live, folks. I can't, this just does not feel like we've come to the sixth of our classes today. We've been doing for Juneteenth in honor of celebration of our ancestors. Roots Tech by Family Search has been celebrating with 6 live virtual classes that have been focused on African American genealogy and taught by nationally known research experts. Some like Rick Murphy. Today, we're good. This last class today, the live class, will be on America's True Forgotten Patriots. And I'll introduce Rick and the topic here in just a little bit. But I want to let you know that all classes today that you're watching on Juneteenth will be available to view afterwards on rootstech.org. Also, you can go to rootstech.org, which is where we have collected content from the last 3 years of conferences on African American genealogy and create your own playlist. You can go in, sign up, get your own account, and look at topics that have been taught by Rick, that have been taught by many others, some that you've seen today, others that you've not heard from, that help you truly understand how you can connect with your ancestry and discover your heritage. Things about overcoming genealogical hurdles, things about leveraging DNA testing, things about accessing lesser known records and resources. Whatever it is you want, you can come to rootstech.org and get valuable tips, techniques, and anything you can to advance your family history so that you can make joyful family history discoveries. I'm Tom Reed. I'm the program manager for African Heritage Initiatives in North America. I work on helping serve an African American audience, those who are trying to reclaim their African roots by anything from experiences, from records, from content, from our relationships with genealogical organizations that specifically focus on African Americans, folks like Rick Murphy and the Society of First African Families in English America, which he represents and will be talking to us about today. And so I welcome you here, and I welcome you to ask any questions during this time. Rick and I are going to have a discussion. We're homeboys. We're good old fashioned. we love each other, and this is going to be fun. I think it's going to be informative for all of you, specifically for the work that Rick's involved in. But we invite you to ask questions along the way, comment, let us know where you're from. I'd love to know how many people are watching now. We got to the end of the day. It's 5 p.m. Eastern time. Rick's been going since yesterday at 4 a.m. So I'm catching up at the very end. So I've gotta infuse some energy into him. No, I never have to infuse energy. Rick is a passionate speaker. He is a known author, award-winning. It's just too much. You told me not to embarrass you, Rick, with all this stuff, but you are an award-winning author, including the highly acclaimed Freedom Road. And as of this morning, you are a award-winning documentarian. We're going to show the trailer to that documentary. Rick, his family lineage has been evaluated and accepted by the Daughters of the American Revolution, the National Society of the Sons of Colonial New England, and the Sons of the American Revolution, as well as the Sons and Daughters of the United States Middle Passage, which we just talked to Evelyn and Ruth. Without further ado, I want to introduce you to my good friend, Rick Murphy. Rick, how are you doing this afternoon, brother?
Tom, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I got one more show at 7 o'clock after this one here, so my day's not done yet. But it's always an honor, Tom, to stop and visit with you, my good friends at Roots Tech and my friends and buddies out there in Salt Lake, Utah. So it's an honor to be with you and all the guests that you have on the show today and all your listening viewers. So it's an honor to be here, Tom. And although you say we're homeboys, you're bigger than I am. And I used to be your size, but you used to beat me down. So I hope it's going to be a good session today.
I will not beat you down today. We do have one comment, and I want to, we have a friend in Renata Yarborough Sanders who's coming from Newport News. She's been with us all day, Rick. I appreciate her and the many others that have dedicated.
She's a true loyal person.
Absolutely. And dedicating Juneteenth, this day that we commemorate in history that means so much. So Rick, tell me, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
Wow, what a question. Juneteenth means an awful lot to me. I think the true meaning of Juneteenth is the freedom of our people, the last enslaved in the United States of America, of Americans of African descent. Who would have ever thought today that we would be celebrating those men, women, and children who were the last to be free? But what it also means to me, the mere fact that an entire region of the country, the enslaved, did not know that they were free. And there's a reason for that. And as we look at the history of our people, whether it's the originals who came here in 1619 or Elizabeth Keys in 1666, when you look at the trials and tribulations that our ancestors went through and how we're not supposed to know today their accomplishments, their contributions. When you look at the forgotten patriots, 20,000 men, women, and children who fled the plantations in the South during the American Revolutionary War and joined the British for one simple reason: freedom, just like those in Juneteenth. When you look at the 10,000 who served in the Continental and the state militias, who served for one reason: freedom. And yet we're celebrating Juneteenth today for those folks who in Galveston, Texas, didn't know that they were free. So to me, Juneteenth means freedom. It means independence. It means so much more. And I know we're going to get into it.
Yeah. You touch on a lot there with just what it means to you. And I appreciate you so much for that. I think one of the things you and I have talked about in the past is that when we think of Juneteenth, we're conditioned to only think emancipation in the Civil War. But there were free people of color before. There were a whole mess of people, of our people, who were in this nation even before the Mayflower arrived, right? Talk to us about those people and about kind of how that connects to your society of the first African families in English America.
Well, I think in general, we all were raised about the Mayflower and the importance of the Mayflower coming in 1620. Certainly for me, coming from Massachusetts, that's all I learned as a child. That's all I read in schools, whether it was junior high or high school and even college. But to find that in 1619 that the Black Mayflower came a year before the Mayflower, where some 60 individuals arrived on two separate ships, having been pirated at sea. They originally were on the San Juan Bautista, and 32 of them arrived on the shores of Point Comfort, Virginia. So to me, when we think about emancipation, we have to think about those who were first enslaved here. The first who were enslaved here, that would not be their fate. So they were captured in Africa, enslaved, put on slave ships, arrived as slaves, but that would not be their fate. They became free. But they accomplished so much within their lifetimes in a very short period of time, but all of their accomplishments were turned on them and their descendants, and that became the 1705 slave codes. And that's really where our history begins, with the 1705 slave codes. And from that point forward, our people have been fighting to become free. There were those who were free, those were those who were freed, and those who were enslaved. But that really has been our legacy, is manumission and freedom. So when we talk about manumission, we really need to talk about those very first who came here, who there were no slave laws. So the House of Burgesses in Virginia and the colonies in America, they developed new laws to enslave those Africans who came here with so many different skills to help build this nation, but they were enslaved. And we're still seeing the residual effects today of that enslavement. So when we think of emancipation, unfortunately, we have been conditioned to think just about the Civil War, but we don't think about all those trailblazers before the Civil War who step by step, brick by brick, broke down that house of enslavement. And that's really what we should be talking about, is emancipation from the beginning of time through the end of time in Galveston, Texas, Juneteenth.
Wow. So tell me about this organization. I mentioned the name of the organization in which you're the president general of. How long ago did it start? Why did you start it? How does it connect back to this period of 1619? Did you call it the Black Mayflower? I don't know if you said that, but I like that. kind of an interesting way to think about it, right? Tell me about.
Well, in my first book, and if you buy my first book, Freedom Road, you will see where I make reference, and others have made reference to the Black Mayflower. So I can't take personal ownership to that, but I
Okay.
do take rights and privilege today to talk always about the Black Mayflower that arrived at Point Comfort. And all of those folks who live in the Hampton Roads can take credit to their ancestors because they came on the Black Mayflower in August 1619. Now, in 2016, I was asked to crisscross the country and talk about the 400th commemoration of the arrival of the first Africans in English America. Now, we know Africans were here in Spanish America, but our history starts in 1607 in Virginia, English America. And while many give me credit as being the founder of the Society of the First African Families of English America, it was really founded out of a concept at the Afro-American Historical Genealogical Society's conference in College Park in Maryland in 2019, when we commemorated the 400th commemoration. And so many people stood up and said that they descended from these first Angolans, and we shouldn't say Africans, Angolans. And so many people said there's got to be an organization that we can connect our ancestors arriving on the Black Mayflower up to a certain period of time. So we brought together like-minded individuals. We formed the Society of the First African Families, and we chose the date of March 5th, 1770, which is the day that Crispus Attucks was assassinated at the Boston Massacre. And we chose that particular date because he's the first man to be considered to be fighting for the American Revolution to end the tyranny of Great Britain. And what many don't realize that he was fighting the end of tyranny of Great Britain, but he was also fighting on behalf of his people with the tyranny of the enslavers of us. So we chose that date, March 5th, 1770, but because it involves the Revolutionary War, we take it up to the end of the Revolutionary War in 1783. So I'm the President General, and I take credit for it, but I can't take full credit because it really came out of the AUGS conference and all of those folks who kept saying to me, we need an organization where we can prove our lineage, where it's going to be peer reviewed by peer reviewers, where we write scholarly journals, where we really go and talk about our ancestors going back to 1619 and to March 5th, 1770, up through the Revolutionary War, because it's our ancestors who were actually the founders of America as defined by their serving in the Revolutionary War, either direct patriotic service or providing aid and comfort.
So let me make sure I get these dates clear, because these are dates that maybe people aren't aware of in American history, right? And it truly is American history. March 5th, 1770 to when in 1776? What is the span of the organization?
The span is August 1619 through March 5th, 1770. But if someone can document someone who served in the Revolutionary War or provided aid and comfort, we allow them to go up to 1783.
Okay. And so they can be a member of your society. And what does that mean? What's the society about? I mean, obviously, bringing attention to these ancestors and making sure people truly understand the history books and where our origins really are in this nation and what we've been able to accomplish. But what's the purpose of the society, and how do people become a part of your society, and why would they want to do that?
Let me footnote something. While the dates are important, what also is important, you have to be able to document that you descend from someone of African descent during that period of time. So our society does not discriminate based on race, color, creed, so long as you're able to prove that you descend from someone of African descent during that period of time. Why do people join? I mean, we're amazed as to how many people, number one, want their family lineages to be approved and verified by a lineage
Mhm.
society. That's important. When you think
Mhm.
about how much time people spend on doing their family trees, and there's no real validation of what they've done. So that's important that there's a validation. It's also that validation is also important in verification for future generations. I am so blessed and fortunate, and everyone talks about how lucky I am. My luck is only because in my early 20s, my maternal and paternal grandfathers had me talk to great aunts and uncles who were in their 90s. So automatically there was a span
Mm.
of 70 years there. So
Wow.
these were men and women who were born in the late 1880s, and they remember their grandparents to the turn of the 1800s, and they
Mhm.
shared their stories. And what was fortunate for me is I went back and took their oral histories and was able to verify it through documentation. So 100 years from now, think of how valuable it is, the research that someone's doing today, to have it validated and verified by Lineage Society, because what we know today is going to be lost when we pass away. So we want to make sure that this history is not lost. It's
Mhm.
also important that we honor the contributions of our ancestors. So while we're a couple hundred years away from those in the Revolutionary War, 100 years from now, someone's going to be 300 years removed from the Revolutionary War. And it's important that we document not only ourselves, but our ancestors and their contributions to the founding of this great nation. And
Mhm.
we really don't have a full appreciation of how great this nation is until we begin to realize that it was our ancestors that helped found the nation. So that's important. We're very big on documentation, on research, and sharing that information with other people. We're really trying to make sure that our history is not lost in the history books. We really want to make sure that those books that are taken off the shelves are replaced with solid knowledge of who we were. So when people start taking books off the shelves on Hank Aaron and Jackie Robinson and Harriet
Mhm.
Tubman, and those great individuals like Rosa Parks, that they're put back up on those shelves, but they also put back on those shelves that it was our ancestors that helped build this. And Tom, you give me a finger like move on. Okay, so
No, no, no.
okay.
I'm punctuating it. Let me put the dot on an exclamation point. Say that again, Rick, please.
Yeah, it's so important that these books that are being taken off the shelves, that they be put back on those shelves, but that we put additional books on the Crispus Attucks and why he was important. Those men up in Bunker Hill and in Lexington and Concord, up there in Massachusetts, far away, but most folks don't realize they were the first true freedom riders. Everyone forgets that Prince Hall was technically the first African American historian for Black people.
Mm.
And now we have the Prince Hall Masonic. So there are so many different things. Most people don't realize that there was an all Black regiment, the 1st Rhode Island, during the American Revolutionary War. Most people don't realize that Savannah, Georgia, was saved from the redcoats, from the English, until the Haitians came and saved Savannah, Georgia. So we don't hear about all these things. So it's important that these things get put back on the shelves. So we're promoting our history, we're promoting the contributions of our ancestors, and we want to make sure that our children, but not just our children, every child hears the importance of our history. And I am a big proponent of Black history. But let's not forget that this is American history and it needs to be in the American books, the American
Well,
history books.
thank you. I want to make sure that all those who are viewing know the name of the organization. We've said it a few times. The
And I'll say it
Society.
again, Society of the First African Families of English America. You can find us at www.sofafeaorg. Tom has it on the screen. You can see it right here below, sofafea.org.
Well, and you had your first conference this year. I had the opportunity to join you and several others from the Black genealogy community. I'm glad you gathered us together, and we gathered at what I felt like was a very unique space. And I think it kind of lends itself to maybe one of the projects that the society is working on. We were at the Museum of the American Revolution there in Philadelphia, And you have talked about how out of this group, even in your logo, you have 1619 to 1770, about how we have gateway ancestors who fought in the Revolutionary War, and they were part of what I think we've titled this whole discussion, America's True Forgotten Patriots. Will you talk a little bit about those individuals and the contributions that they made, and why you're honoring them too, and what you're doing to honor them in terms of kind of a national movement that's going to be happening in the next few years? And I'm gonna switch over to another graphic while you talk here. Go ahead and share, Rick, a little bit more about that.
Well, Tom, thank you for being part of our first conference. Whenever you have a first conference, you never know how it's going to turn out. And our board of directors hit the ball out of the park. We were absolutely amazed. First of all, we sold out. And there were a limited number of tickets anyways. We knew it would be a hit. We had no idea that we would sell out. And although we called it a conference, it really was a summit. And what it was a summit where we brought people in, and they engaged the audience, and the audience engaged them. And the question we posed, how do we begin to bring the light of these close to 10,000 men, women, and children who fought in the Revolutionary War, and how build this democratic nation that we have, and nobody knows anything about this. So we brought world leaders such as yourself to come in and say, these are the kinds of things that we need to begin to do to help people understand this. I mean, folks in the audience were passionate. How come they didn't know about this? They didn't read this in school. I mean, this was like bringing everybody into a conference and automatically speaking Latin, because nobody had an idea it was going to come. But at the end of the conference, everybody was a master in Latin. We then talked about how can we come together and collaborate as organizations to begin to put forward the concept of these forgotten patriots of the American Revolution. And when we realized that only 10,000 out of 200,000 men, women, and children served, but when we look at the man hours, nearly 20 to 25% of the man hours of those who fought were these men of color. So just think, if you were a captain or a general and you put your arm behind your back and you lost 25% of your fighting force, would you have won that battle? So we may still be speaking with a British accent, a little bit more than mine from my Boston accent. But the reality is, when you think about that, 20 to 25% of the manpower of the American Revolution was these men of color. And those who talk about forgotten patriots, they say, oh, well, they were just building latrines. And no, when you look at their bios, when you look at the information off of their pension records and their bounty records, and you realize that they fought from battle to battle to battle, when the average time that they served was between 36 to 49 months, average 42, and the white soldiers served 3 to 9 months, average of 6 months. When you realize that the length of time that they served, these were actual fighting men. This was a real fighting force. So again, when we talk about Juneteenth and how our history was taken from us, and they didn't want us to know our history, the history of these men and women and children, because many of them were 10, 11, 12-year-old children, were taken from us all these years, 250 years. We don't know anything about this. So when we discussed this at the summit, the recommendations that were made was unbelievable, Tom.
Yeah. I it's interesting, Rick. I'm just feeling you right now, right? And I know how passionate you are about this. I was in College Park, Maryland, when we talked about those in 1619 and that almost standing room only ovation that you received delivering your message there. I was there again April 15th this year as we had the summit, and you called us together to work together to really bring to light the America's true forgotten patriots. Jennifer Horsley, I was just about to say, Jennifer Horsley is saying, amen. Thank you. Thank you. Heroes for our young people to remember and admire. You are speaking fire here. And we're so grateful that you're shedding light on this, Rick. You've talked to me about another project that's coming up. Well, actually, let's I'm going to switch gears just for a second, and we'll talk about America. I want to talk about America 250 towards the end, if that's okay, because I want to share with our people. I remember the College Park speech, personal prologue from Facebook. I'm telling you, man, that was fire. That was passion at Rick's essence. But I want to share with people. I shared with people when I introduced you today that as of this morning, you are an award-winning documentarian, and it's because of the work that you've been doing to tell the story of these first African families and melding it with those true forgotten patriots as well into this documentary. And so, if I can, hopefully I'm going to be able to bring up the trailer for your. Let me grab. I got to grab it. Oh, sorry. Let me grab it here. The trailer for your documentary that individuals will have the opportunity to watch. Hold on, I want to make sure it doesn't go too early. Let me see here. Okay, I've got it now. So let me share my screen, and I do hope that the sound comes through on this. Okay, hopefully you can see this now and play this for the audience here. This trailer, the arrival of the first documented Africans in English America, trailer by Rick Murphy.
"350 of us were put on a slave ship called the San Juan Bautista. The men and older boys were chained and taken down dark stairs and put into the cargo hold of the ship. Many died weeks at sea.
Wow. Wow.
Tom, thank you for sharing that. And obviously, because it's from one medium to this medium, the sound is in the. But we had a couple of premieres over the weekend, and I must admit I had a tear in my eye when folks stood up. I mean, the words that they used, it was just amazing. And then this morning when I woke up, I got the email that we had won our first film festival. It was emotional. And what's really emotional, what really drives me on this is my ancestors speak to me. And those of us who were genealogists, we appreciate that. And those of us who are Americans of African descent, we know there was an awful lot of trauma in our families. So when we do our genealogical research, we get chills when we do these things because it's the ancestors speaking. So while you see me, it's the ancestors coming out, and you can feel their passion. You can feel what they're thinking about, how they're thinking about it. So when I did the documentary, that we try to do it in the voice of the Angolans, and I'm telling you, there were women crying. I mean, it was emotional. I mean, I had no idea. I had no idea what the impact would be. So I'm honored, and thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, you're always doing impactful work. We're seeing the comments coming from those of us like finding the enslaved laborers at UVA, talking about, how beautiful this was and how moving it is. And again, going back to even your impassioned speech at College Park, Rick, do you know that one of the questions we were asked is that speech available from OG's conference? Is that available online somewhere? Was it recorded? Do you remember?
I believe it was recorded, Tom. I don't know.
Okay.
Several people have asked me about that.
Mhm.
I certainly hope it is, because I don't think I could ever rise to that occasion again.
I don't know what you had to drink that morning, but man,
hey, someone slipped something in that coffee that morning, because I was on a roll.
Well, if we can find it, we'd love to share that with our audience and those who are viewing. There's a lot who are interested in it. And thank you for the work that you're doing. And I look forward, as one person, just to see it, to see the full documentary. There was the URL at the end, and hopefully we'll be able to share the URL on social channels and all that are watching, so that they can get a chance to go ahead and watch the documentary for themselves as well, and give their kudos and thanks, just like you heard this morning. So,
Thank you.
but I want to kind of switch towards the end. This project called America 250, and you and I have talked at length about this and what you're preparing for, and how what the society's role is in this. And I am prepared, if you want me to go over to the website and we can look at some of the things I think that you talked about before. But talk to us more about what you're involved in with America 250, what America 250 is, and how the Society of First African Families of English America is involved in that project.
Well, Tom, as you know, I can multitask. So why don't you go over to the website, and I'll explain it to everybody, so that way they can see it as I'm explaining to it. One of the outcomes from the summit was an action plan that we really need to begin to look at how we bring the knowledge of the forgotten patriots. So we have a webpage here called America 250. And I'm sure all of you who are genealogists and historians know that July 4th, 1776 was the founding of the nation. July 4th, 2026 will be the 250th anniversary of the founding of this nation. And we're not going to allow this founding to go forward without people having a true appreciation for how our ancestors were part of this. So what we're doing is we're being the host, we're being the facilitator, and we're asking all of these different organizations to come together. And just like we did at our conference, at our summit, we asked every organization, what have you done? But more important, what are you going to be doing to bring to light to the American people the contributions of our ancestors in terms of the building of this nation? We were most interested in those organizations that have chapters around the country. So we don't want to just hear that the chapters are doing something. We want something to be done at the national level to institutionalize our ancestors in American history and have that pushed out to the chapters. So we don't want to bottom up, because we know some parts of the country aren't going to do this. We want a top-down approach with the national organizations. We're going to be looking at reenactors. We're going to be looking at curriculum. We're going to be looking at, you name it. We're going to be putting out grants. We're going to be going to these individual states. We're going to be asking them, what monies are you going to be allocating for folks to go out there? If you're an author on anything dealing with the colonial period or the revolutionary period, please let me know. We're going to put your books up there. If you're a reenactor, let us know. We need to know that. If you belong to a historical society, a genealogical society, let us know. We want to know how your organizations are going to get involved. We can no longer allow our history to be forgotten history. And we cannot allow the forgotten patriots to be forgotten any longer. And shame on us if we don't use July 4th, 2026 as a way to bring our history as part of American history forward, because if we don't, they'll be forgotten again, and we will be forgotten. So don't let our children, our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren not know what we have done. So you'll see we've got pictures up here. And when you think about these Revolutionary War soldiers, when they went back to New England, they demanded their emancipation, and those New England states, immediately after the Revolutionary War, manumitted the enslaved in those Northeast states. Most of us don't know that in 1783, immediately after the Revolutionary War, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, freed their enslaved people in those states. We don't know this. And just like Juneteenth, where they didn't want the enslaved in Texas to know that they were free, they didn't want folks in the remainder of those southern states and other states around the country to know that there were Black people who were free in America in certain states. We need to change this. All these things we need to change today. Juneteenth is important. It's important for a reason. It's not about inclusion. It's about admitting the original sin was wrong. And these are the things we need to do to begin to change our history. And America 250 is going to be that vehicle. And we thank those who brought us Juneteenth to let us know now's the time to change. So we look for organizations to support. If you belong to an organization, tell that organization to reach me, send me an email, send me a letter saying we support you, because we're going to put up there on our list, on our website, organizations that support this effort. And if your organization is not up there, you go to them and ask them, why aren't we up there supporting this effort? Because this is about our ancestors. And when you realize, and again, they, whoever they are, want us to focus on the Civil War. And the Civil War is so important. But the 3/4 of our ancestors were here by the end of the Revolution. And why is that important? Not only for the 10,000 men who served, but if your ancestor was enslaved and they tilled the fields and planted the seeds and grew the crops that anyone in the country ate, that meant they provided aid and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
If they grew cotton, if they sheared the sheep and provided wool, and the soldiers wore that, that's aid and comfort. So that means 3/4 of our ancestors were founders of America. So you can understand why they didn't want us to know that, just like why in Texas they didn't want those enslaved people to know that they were free. It's all about money. And we were very valuable during up to the period of the Civil War. And when the moment the war was over, we had no value to anybody. We got to change that. This is our country. This is our flag. This is our democracy. And it's important that we help others understand that in a collaborative fashion. We're not trying to be argumentative. We just want everyone to know our rich history because it's their rich history as well.
Right. It's all our history.
That's correct.
I'm so grateful. I mean, you've opened my eyes. Like, we have the opportunity to both serve in the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. You served as the vice president of history. I served as the vice president of genealogy for a while. And that was during the period where we were talking about 1619, the commemoration of that, the 400th year. Happened to be in Point Comfort, Fort Monroe. And that had a great experience there. But I learned so much from you. And I want to just, honor you and tell you how much I appreciate you bringing this history to light. I'm curious, those who are watching today, how many of you are aware that there's this America 250 program and the thing that's going to be happening in 2026 to recognize, the semi-quincentennial. That is a word I had never heard until I saw it on your website, the semi-quincentennial of the birth of this nation. And like you said, the founders of this nation, which included our ancestors. And how many of you knew? Please comment on, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, if you're on Roots Tech, please let us know what you've known. Maybe you're hearing this for the first time. If you're hearing it for the first time, that's okay. This is why we're telling you we've got some time in front of us. But that time is happening fast. It is 2023. We're getting ready for July 4th, 2026. And so you've made it known through your website, all the people and support that you're looking for this initiative, Rick. And I hope that people will take this seriously, that their organizations will jump on board. You have our support. We've been behind you every step of the way at Family Search. Sons and Daughters, I know, is behind you. OGS is behind you. You've got so many other organizations that are supporting you and everything you're trying to do with this. I hope that others will also support. But let us know.
Tom, let me jump in for a second.
Yeah.
America 250 is not a program of the Society of the First African Families of English America.
Okay.
America 250 is a federal program with substantial funds, and these substantial funds have been allocated to the states. And many of these states have had no intentions of doing anything that included people of color. So that's why we're coming forward now and saying that although some of these states have had money for the past couple of years, we want to make sure that as you spend the remainder of your funds, you're promoting programs that are going to promote 25% of who the military was that gave us the freedom of this nation. So it's important. So we're not going out with our hands out saying, you know, we want to make sure that our ancestors are going to be represented in all of that federal money that went out. So America 250, type America 250 in URL, and you will find it is a federal program, been around for the last 5 or 6 years. Substantial monies have gone out to the states, large cities, and large organizations. And we've been going around saying, what are you doing? And everyone says, well, we didn't know this was an issue. Well, you know, Rick Murphy, I'm going to make it an issue. And what really makes it an issue is when you all come behind me, and when I look over my right shoulder and the left shoulder and everybody sees everybody behind, we're going to make sure that our kids know what America 250 is all about. And we know that we lose our young Black men in the 3rd grade when they start showing pictures of Black men as slaves in chains. Let's start showing our young Black men in the 3rd grade, Black men who were Revolutionary War soldiers who were fighting to end the tyranny of England and the tyranny here. That's what's important.
You call me Reverend, but you preaching right now.
Tom, you asked me not to do that here. You told me not to.
Everybody in Roots Tech, we're getting comments by so many people who are on Roots Tech watching right now that they didn't know about America 250, that they want to make sure we have.
And all this money that's been floating out there in these states and nobody knows about it. That's our money. This is our tax dollars. And they're going to spend this money on tourism programs to do the same old tourism stuff. And when people go these places, now, Tom, I have been going to all of these Revolutionary War reenactments, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 reenactors, and maybe 1 or 2 Black reenactors, and nobody knows anything about the forgotten Patriots. And you wonder why? So you wonder why Juneteenth is important? Those folks did not know that they were free. Yes. How is that possible? Well, how is it possible in 2023 we not know that 25% of the man hours in the Revolutionary War were Black soldiers?
Tell it.
Come on, folks, you got to support me. Got to get into those communities.
You've got Amanda Aguilar on Facebook who is saying, thank you for bringing awareness. You've got Rebecca Adams-Palmer from Roots Tech, who does know that my ancestor Henry Hill served during the Revolution. You've got you're opening.
Get out of here, Tom. I didn't know that.
Right? You got Henry Goins. I forgot cousin Henry.
Henry Goins' cousin. That's right.
Just wanting to know about the video that we're showing, about that we showed the trailer for. How are people going to watch that? We need to wrap up. We've only got a couple of minutes. So
if you go to Arrival, all you got to remember, arrivalfirstafricans.com. That's the website. Okay. On that website, you can see the trailer, and on that website, you can buy the video. It's $14.95.
Okay. So hopefully people got that, and we'll be able to post it on our social channels. I'm going to throw it in the chat for our back in studio supporters to help us with. Diane Slater, you are awesome. Rick, thanks for sharing.
Tom, did an hour go by? I keep telling you, don't have me on only for an hour. It goes by too fast. we can do this all afternoon, Tom. Once you grind me up, you know I don't let down easy.
See, that's why I love having these conversations with you, Rick. Monica Osuna from Facebook, I wasn't aware until now. Thank you. The work you're doing, Rick, is phenomenal, groundbreaking. You're helping all of us understand more about our people. That I can't think of a better way to end our Roots Tech Family Search Live program than having this discussion. You bring to attention our ancestors. Janice talked about it this morning. Therese Beckman is talking about thank you
Great
for
people.
educating me. This Juneteenth is about the education of ourselves and our connections to our ancestors, and what you're doing with the Society of First African Families of English America, what you're doing in preparation for America 250 on behalf of your society, what you've been doing, since you've been leading the effort to talk about 1619 is so important and so valuable. And just the comments are flooding in, Rick. No wonder why you're an award-winning author, an award-winning documentarian. My buddy Bruce Brand. Rick, keep getting the word out and we will help. That's from my buddy Bruce Brand at Family Search.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you so much. And thank everyone who's been on today, who's been watching, who have invested your time to make this Juneteenth something special. We hope on behalf of Roots Tech and Family Search, the Society of First African Families in English America, Sons and Daughters in the United States Middle Passage, the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, and many, many more. We hope that you've enjoyed what we've been able to share with you today. Come back to rootstech.org. These will be on rootstech.org as well as other classes so that you can watch this content over and over again and get inspired and get fired up like Rick left us this afternoon. Rick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Audience, thank you so much for joining us. Have a blessed rest of your Juneteenth today. Bye now.